screening and showing this movie. We actually saw it in Berlin earlier this year, and we were just swept away. And we really, really wanted to have this movie because it says so much and it's so touching, and also it's something that is so important. And as a documentary, it really, really brings heart, you know. So I think it's fabulous that we are showing it, and wonderful that we are doing this panel. The problem was that originally this was meant to be shown in a public space, but because that the pandemic cases in Hong Kong got so bad recently, so now the whole thing is on Zoom. So hopefully that things will get better soon.
Thank you so much, Raymond. And do you want to give a plug for any more films that are particularly relevant to activism and queer movements?
Well, I mean, the thing is that our cinemas are all closed, so it's going to maybe reopen in 14 days or 21 days. So we actually don't really know exactly when it's going to open, and hopefully that there will be cinema slots for us to carry on the festival. So at the moment it's unsure yet, you know. But one movie that we have seen, we are about to show is a Monsoon, which is a very good British movie. It's about starring Henry Golding, and he is playing a character who's returned to Vietnam. So that is an interesting movie about displacement.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you so much. And also, it was remiss of me not to say, this is the second time that you had to reschedule the festival. So you're on a hat trick for getting the rest in. But how phenomenal is it that before the shutdown happened in Hong Kong, that so many people got to see such an important film? And so I think, again, this is such a rare opportunity to have directors, to have actors, to have defenders, academics, the directors of the festival and the founders. It's a fantastic, fantastic collaboration, and as intersectional as we can get it. One disclaimer I need to share with you: there's going to be a post-production version of this that's a bit like the magic of television. So I'm going to indulge our patient, wonderful audience that are not just all my friends, but just because we have a few inserts of comments. And of course, if this was going ahead live, you would have been in the amazing Kino room at the absolutely radically phenomenal, badass Partners in Crime, Eton HK. So a shout out to Dirk and the rest of the team, who absolutely not just support our bad behaviour, but actively encourage it and have this incredible safe house for defenders. And Planet Ally has been a founder since the last 2 years of being at Eton House, and I tell you what, we could not do what we do. And again, it would be remiss. We've hosted more than 50 human rights defenders for 6 of our international events at Eton HK, the Asia Pacific Rainbow Families Forum, the Human Dignity Festival, which is an ode to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and of course, where we're really leading into now, the Miles of Love queer travel advocacy, which was a roadshow for Australia and Hong Kong last year. And of course, Miles of Love was actually the name, I don't know if Misha knows this, but that is the name that we gave to our event that was holding space and allyship and fundraising for the Chechen crisis back in 2017. And we've now taken that and used it as all of our global work that we do in that travel space. So enough from me, because we've got way too many speakers and we want to hear from all of them. But again, very, very excited. And again, we're all about allyship. The clue's in the name. You'll notice that we've got the trans flag. Amal, who's our Director of Gender Equality and Culture, was unable to make tonight because of an illness, but she has come up with 2 fantastic spoken word pieces, which are a nod to Trans Awareness Week in TDOR, which was November 20, and of course, yesterday, World AIDS Day. So you'll notice that we're holding space for both. And what is really special, we would have done that anyway, but David France, we have a link to that with the work that you will know of his. Many of you may have come across him in terms of the queer space with How to Survive a Plague around HIV and AIDS. And then, of course, more recently, booming on Netflix, the life and death of Marsha P. Johnson. So we hold that space, and it's really important to carry solidarity. And also one last quick shout out to Amnesty International, who we partner with. Just last night kicked off, obviously, World AIDS Day, but the 10 days of action that lead up to Human Rights Day on December 10. And we were part of that conversation with some of the defenders that are about to be on trial, Kel and Oscar from Turkey. And it was day one of activism. So we're really excited to have this opportunity in day two leading up to Human Rights Day. So I want to test everybody's buzzers. I joked that I feel like I'm a game show host sometimes. So we're going to do one quick fire round. And Raymond, we might even keep you on for this one if you're ready. We talk about allyship and advocacy, and that's what we're going to be breaking down. So the global theme is global solidarity for World AIDS Day. We're queering that space, as did Amnesty for their 10 days of action. What can you suggest is the best way to show queer solidarity internationally? And Raymond, buzzer, test your buzzer.
What is the best way to show what?
Queer solidarity and allyship around the world. Like, how do Hong Kong do that?
Well, I think first thing is actually communication. I think everybody has to be on the same page and really sort of like open our hearts and talk to each other. I think by communicating is always the best way. And so really just opening a dialogue, I think that's how we should do it.
Wonderful. Who would you like to pass the baton to?
I don't know, David?
David.
Well, I would say going to film festivals. I think that there's no better place to really understand diversity and experience a breadth of points of view and lives and realities than what you are all able to do as programmers of film festivals around the world. And I've just been so amazed at how the work is continuing, even despite the pandemic.
Okay, David, please pass your allyship baton.
I'm just going to push it right over to Costa.
Great. I think something really important is sharing practices and supporting each other and teaching each other ways to show solidarity. Each situation is, very unique from country to country, and we might come in and not knowing the best way to support the situation. So really, as Ray said, having constant communication and being clear about how we can best support each other. And I'm gonna pass it on to Olga.
Hi. And I think it's crazy time, but it's time when we can stay at home and be in different places. It's online, and we can support each other, and we can talking, and we can understand each other, and I think it's good. And now we can see what we can't see before. For example, different festivals and different events and different classes, and we should find something good in this situation.
Fantastic.
Misha?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think that we have to call this program not Mice of Love, but Gigabytes of Love, I think. Yes, and everything what people said before, absolutely true. To me, it's also part of being a good ally is listening to the people I would like to be an ally. And this period probably is the best of all, because activity is a little bit, made the change, and we have a lot of time to listen, but the ability of listening is very important for being a good ally.
Wow.
That's all.
So you can see, judging just by the answers, the depth of experience and intersectionality, which is wonderful. Okay, so we have managed by some miracle to get everybody online before I curse it, and we've got one more guest that we'll introduce shortly. But we have got Costa, who's in Bulgaria, and is dividing his time very carefully today. So we're going to, obviously, we were going to feature this anyway, but Costa, we're going to focus on a bit of a chat with you so that we can share our time with you. And before we do that, if not everybody is aware of the absolutely incredible award-winning, poignant and powerful short documentary dance film that Costa created, and spoiler alert, you will see his beautiful movements in a moment. We would love to show you this film, and it's not a premiere in Hong Kong, Costa, because this was actually Ray. I think you know this. Waiting for Colour was shown at the Hong Kong Lesbian and Gay Film Festival either 2017 or 2018. Am I correct?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, without further ado, settle back. It's 6 minutes. Do be aware that we do want to put a trigger and content warning around this, and if you are experiencing any difficulties, any triggering moments, step away. If you want to let us know either directly in our Facebook chat, or something, we can provide some support to you. But again, I really hope that you enjoy this really powerful depiction, and we'll talk more about what sparked that for Costa and his team. So roll Waiting for Colour.
In 2009, I met a person in a chat. He swore, vowed, that he was a trustworthy man.
They told me, better for me to leave Chechnya, so that they could never meet me in the district. I have been threatened to give 24 hours to leave Chechnya.
In the former commandant's office, they turned the camera on and started to ask questions about my relationships with men.
They assaulted and humiliated me blood, and then showed recording to see my photos. They asked for 100,000 rubles for my release.
Took off my clothes, my shirt, jeans, even my underwear. They themselves started to undress me. The one who was driving filmed all of it. The others just beat me.
I had bracelets on my wrist, and also a leather bag, which a straight man rarely would, full of personal belongings for hygiene, moist outlet, anti-corset, etc. So they saw the stuff, and I heard you are back as you are. I'll shoot you right here. That was the head of the district department of domestic affairs.
It was sufficient to imprison me.
After that, they handcuffed me and put me in the trunk of the car. Listen, a lot of people saw me. I responded. Right on the street. I saw 2 policemen, and they said I should proceed.
Они получали удовольствие от нашего мучения. Они приказали другим людям делать с нами, что они хотят. Они били меня все это время огромными черными сапогами. Они уже знали мое имя.
Они уже знали мое имя. Не бейте шока. Шока перестанет чувствовать боль. Нам этого не надо.
Они сказали, что им надо трогать нас своими руками.
The first thing the police officer asked me was which female name I liked the most. I didn't respond.
Когда
And
они
then he hit me.
стали без меня хватать, они меня сказали, что они описали, что я монстр. И мою жизнь как монстр. То я начала говорить, какой-то я ищу, чтобы мне быть писем и далее учим. Я стал только грязно стоит больше, чем я.
I feel nauseated and choked with their own food. And as they were grabbing me, everywhere, I thought that they were going to rape me.
One of the people who grabbed me was our local police officer. Потом они сказали, есть доказательства, что вы пьете. Вы приносите позор на наш народ. Вы не должны жить. Мы всех вас поймаем.
They tied my hands back and linked the wires to me with lamps, so that the wires permeated under my nails. They poured water on my skin, so the electricity would hit me harder. They laughed when I cried.
We brought in a hollow tube.
and a barbed
They
wire.
put tube inside of him. Then they put the barbed wire inside this tube, and then they were slowly pulling the barbed wire out. When I saw that video and realized they had already brought the tube and the barbed wire, I did.
At that moment, we lost any hope of coming out alive.
If this happened to me again, I would hang myself for sure.
Если ты важный человек, который мог бы принести позор властям или администрации, тебя не выпускают, тебя убивают. Они уже знали мое имя.
They said that if I wouldn't tell them at least 3 names, they would accuse me of something similar, and I would never be released from the
Не
prison.
мучьте их так сильно. Стоит ли их принести к тебе? Нет еще. Мы скоро решим, после того, как получим приказ от главного
The Lord came to us, the chairman of the parliament.
Магомед Даудов.
He told them that if they honor the traditions, they must kill us, and that if they did everything, they would not be punished for it. If any opponents knew that I was a lesbian, they would beat me and rape me, film it, and then share it with others, or simply kill me. I needed to hide the fact that I am a lesbian, so I married a man so as not to ruin the reputation of my family. There was a school teacher from a village called Chechnya. It was obvious that he was gay. He was killed in his wave by his relatives.
I could not imagine in my worst nightmares that my relatives would do this about me. These male relatives thanked the police for the information and told them that they would resolve this matter for themselves. They began to clobber me with impossible words and put a gun to my temple. One of them crushed my bones so that I had surgery for it to be removed.
Мой брат вошел в мою комнату, сел передо мной с пистолетом и попросил меня застрелиться. Он сказал, что пообещал отцу, что он сам этого не сделает, и было бы легче объяснить другим, что я по ошибке застрелился. Я ответил, что я не стану себя убивать, и что если он готов меня убить, то пора.
Get the same emotion every time. Costa, not only are we watching your beautiful film, but we have you here. Welcome, my friend. I won't try the Bulgarian I tried for the Adelaide Film Festival because, let's be honest, it needs a little bit more work. So we'll do that off screen. Thank you so much for joining us. It's just an incredible opportunity to hear from you directly. And again, this theme that David alluded to as of being compelled to take action in allyship and I guess in particular with yourself and David in artivism. Can you talk to us about, just take us to that moment when you were learning about this and how you went through the journey of making your film?
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much for having me and for showing the film. It's a really great honor to be on the same panel and have it shown alongside David's really powerful movie. And for me, it started in the same as everyone in the spring of 2017 when I first learned about the situation from one of the pieces in The New Yorker, and just these really short pieces of really factual news about what was going on. And for me, as a Bulgarian who moved to New York, I was, discovering my own freedom living as a gay man in a city where I could be myself. So I was really juxtaposing that with the stories coming from Chechnya, and I wanted to use whatever voice I had as an artist to contribute to the people who were already doing the work there and the activists who were doing the really important work. And the medium that I was most comfortable with at the time was dance and film. So with some of my friends, we just created the film out of the need to also do what we can. And I based it on the stories published by the Russian LGBT network. I think it was one of the first reports that they published with anonymous stories. And using contemporary dance, I kind of would go in the studio and read each story and let that move me and find some interpretation of it. That for me, it was important to not be too literal or too graphic with the movement, but to kind of leave a level of abstraction and let the stories lead and let the movement follow them.
It's incredible. And you know what excites me most about this curation is there's a thread. There's this beautiful thread. So we might jump a bit back and forth, but centering it around this because, I mean, I remember discovering your film because I was searching for anything I could find. And I believe Welcome to Chechnya, David and the crew discovered you. And there's not only, you know, have we just seen your film, but that you play a role in the Welcome to Chechnya. So just to throw back to David, how did that happen, David?
Well, you're absolutely right. We did know about Costa's work, and not just his artistic work, but his political work as well. I had started attending demonstrations by an activist organization that started in New York and kind of spread across the globe called Voices for Chechnya, that rose up after the news was first reported in early April of 2017 to try and bring more attention to kind of street level grassroots action around what was happening in Chechnya at a time when the news media was really ignoring it. And it's really one of the big travesties in this entire horrific story is how the news media really has not held up its own responsibility to decry these crimes that are still going on there and still being ignored. So we started attending these demonstrations. We started filming them, thinking maybe that would become part of our narrative for our film. And we were just gathering up as many of the people into our universe that we knew of who were doing this kind of work. So, and as I joked with Costa the other day, I also had two principal members of my crew who had spent time in Bulgaria as undergraduates. And so they had this kind of feeling about a kinship with Costa, even before any of us ever met. And when it came time for us to need to call on activists to help us in our post-production, we reached out to activists and asked them as an activism if they could lend their faces to us to help protect the lives of people who are in the film by disguising them and guaranteeing them anonymity. And Costa was one of the first people who said yes. So he's now in the film. He's in my film as well as in his own film, and has really put himself on the line to do what he can to bring attention to this issue.
It's just an extraordinary link, and like you said, about bringing people into your universe, and we're so glad. A very quick segue to welcome Dory. Dorian Lau is our dear friend and advisor at Planet Ally on forced displacement, but her day job is working as a China researcher for Amnesty in East Asia, and absolutely wonderful to have you here, Dory. So just remiss of me not to welcome you. What I also love about this is each time we've done a panel, one of the panelists has met someone that they didn't know. So David and Costa, you've obviously know each other, but you've done something recently. Misha, you met Costa rather in the Adelaide Film Festival Zoom, and we had Pussy Riot member Olya with us. But I don't believe, Dory, you're meeting everybody. I think you know Misha. But Costa and Olga I think this is our opportunity to Zoom introduce you, and then the thread between, as you were talking about, David, this incredible active allyship like you could never explain, but the deep fake technology. So I'm curious to ask this question of you, Costa, but then Olga, to ask it from the perspective of knowing these defenders. So Costa, if I go to you first, can you share what it felt like, and obviously as an activist and an artivist as well?
Yes, so for me, it was a really amazing opportunity to continue being part of this cause. And, you know, after I created my dance film, I felt like I had produced most of the work I could. So then when I got the call from David's producers to be a part of another project on the same topic, that was really special to me. And immediately I knew that they had really invested the time in making something that will reach a lot of people. So it was a really great privilege to be part of that and to continue helping. And you know, at that point my face was already in my film, so I thought, why not? And it's a great opportunity for, I think, watching the film, I was really moved by how intimate all of the scenes were. You know, it's not footage of people in a room on their own just talking. It was these really emotional moments of people hugging each other and crying and really saying goodbye to someone for the last time when they had to flee the country. So it was really special that all of those moments could be preserved and kept in the movie. And you know, having my face and other activists' faces helping protect that identity was really amazing. And every time we talk about the film, I get moved in a completely new way each time.
I was going to go to Olga, but David, just quickly, something that I've loved listening to you talk about, and Costa was touching on, is the emotion. And you've talked previously with your background in investigative journalism and your own activism, but what struck you was that this was, in fact, a love story in the most radical, incredible sense. But yeah, do you want to just touch on that with us? And then Olga, I'm going to come and check in on you and ask the same question about the deep fake technology.
Absolutely. You know, I knew from what I had read about Chechnya that I was entering into a story that was going to be as horrific as any piece of reporting I'd ever done in my career. I knew it was going to be you know, really hard to face, and a really difficult emotional journey. And it wasn't until my first call was to Olga, and Olga said, I said, you know, could we do this as a documentary? And she was encouraging, but she wasn't sure it could be done because there were so many security issues that needed to be addressed. And so she invited me to come to Moscow and talk to her about it. And when I got there, what I found was this incredible environment of warmth and caring and love. And you know, I once asked Olga, I don't know if she'll remember, I said, I think I see your maternal side here, that it seemed that what she was bringing to the shelter, to the survivors, was this kind of unconditional love. And she just went, oh no, it's work. But it's just that's the way Olga does her work. And of course, this is a story of people who are persecuted because of how they love. And to find this environment of great caring made me realize that there's something certainly remarkable and unique about Olga and what she brings to her activism. But there's also something so queer about the way the community has responded to what's happening in Chechnya, and it's a kind of a radical kind of an activism that is really centered in love, and I think that in the end, the footage that I brought back to New York to make into this film really is the footage of a love story of a kind that only Hollywood ever imagines, and yet there it is in real life.
That's incredible. And Olga, what's interesting about Planet Ally and again Hong Kong's relationship with love is Asia Pacific Rainbow Families Forum, and that's where we've had Misha be part of. And so we talked a lot in the last few years about Chechnya and linking that to families, but you are the first parent that I've actually met. And as a fellow parent, what strikes me is not only are we watching predominantly, a lot of gay men and lesbian women in this footage that we're seeing in the film, but you were there with your 7-year-old son. I think that is something that cannot. I don't think anybody could fathom. Can you share a little bit about the perspective of fleeing from a country and the work that you do from the parent that you are, because that's an extra element to juggle.
Yeah, it's true. Be mother in Russia and be activist. It's a little. It's high risk, I think, because if you open lesbian, and we have homophobic law about gay propaganda, and it's mean if I open lesbian, any time people can bring my son, and I can have a big problem. But when you live in this situation, you don't thinking about it. You're just working and thinking that everything okay. Everything will be okay. And when I work with Chechen problem situation, one moment I just feeling that it's a long time my son was out of the country, out of the Russian, and I was okay. And then I should bring my son back to Russia because he need a study, he need a stay with me. I can't all time move to him, and when I bring him, I feel like okay, I'm not safe because it's not about me. I can move, I can be live in secret places, and I'm okay, but he's not, because he every day went to kindergarten, and I don't know what can happen. I think now I'm safe. I feel safe because my son's safe. And for parents, I think it's most important feeling and your children is safe. And
thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's profound. It's profound. I want to ask you, just going back to the conversation we were having with Costa and David. So, from David's perspective, it's bringing the technology to you. From Costa's perspective, it's being a part of that technology and his beautiful face being lent to the film. How does it feel for you? I mean, obviously, could you share a bit about when David asked you and the other defenders about that, but also when you see the film and you see those defenders and how it feels, because you know them, they are your friends, they're your chosen family.
It's when David make a film in the process, as he showed me different variants how it look, and all time I think, oh yes, yes, but and David all time try. And one day he showed me, and I think, oh my gosh, for me, I understand that. For me, I know who these people, but I see new people, like same but new. If I know these people, yes, of course, I understand who is it. But it's really, it's incredible. It's like you can see everything, you can see what feeling these people, but it's new faces. It was something, yeah.
And maybe
I remember showing Olga images and saying, "Who is this? Who is this?" To see if she recognized people, and it wasn't until we came up with this face doubling technique that she almost didn't know. I mean, she knew the settings. She almost didn't know who those people were, and she just laughed and laughed. I remember that day. That was the day that we thought, finally, we will be able to show the world this movie.
I remember you saying in some webinars that the bar was not to make sure that their own mother could recognize them. It certainly sounds like you more than truly did that. Misha, welcome, my friend. Thank you for joining us. May I ask the same question of you? Obviously, we don't see you or someone being you in the film, but you know this story very well, and you and Olga work very hard behind the scenes. What's your reaction to this technology and the journey of learning about it?
Hi, Bess. Haven't seen you 2 years already. First of all, I would love to say my deeply thanks to David and Olga and Kosta and all people who were involved in creating this marvelous, wonderful documentary, because it's not just, I just can imagine how it was difficult, because it's not just documentary. You care about security. And that is, I appreciate very much. And yes, I was involved behind the scene from the very beginning, when we just got these first calls, and we couldn't believe in this situation that we have to prove the facts that sex-taking happened in the country of Dostoevsky and Pushkin, for example, in our century. And also I helped a little bit with the fundraising and also other issues. But this movie is a kind of, I would say it's a movie. It's moving thing. That you feel this move of people, anyone who was involved directly in this process. I mean, to help people to literally save their lives and lives of the relatives in some cases, and to give them some space, safe space, loving space, as David said, in shelter, and which is still working for such people of LGBTI population in Russia, for example. This center still welcomes people who had very difficult situations, especially with this coronavirus period, because not everyone is welcomed in his or her or their own families, for example, parents' house. And these people who were filmed as well, I just could not imagine how brave they were to decide to be a part of this movie. So I think that there is no word in any language to describe how important and how magnificent this documentary is. Thank you very much.
It's touching, especially from you, to hear that. So, Dory, we're going to throw to you. With all of your experience in global movement work, I'm curious to ask you, I mean, have you known of, I mean, obviously we're talking about uncharted waters with Welcome to Chechnya, but has there been anything that's come close prior to where defenders were featured this way? I want to ask you that. And also with regard to the technology, we talk a lot about surveillance, and COVID, you know, it brings its own technical problems. But for human rights defenders and surveillance, there's been a little bit more regression, I guess, or more surveillance. Can you share a little bit about updates or the context of that?
Yeah, I think it was actually, I think that the movies are extremely inspiring because for a lot of activists and people who are trying to tell the story of activists, it's always a struggle to tell the story and to tell their story, to document their work without putting them in danger. And the reason why we need to keep coming up new ways to do that is because the technology of surveillance is getting better and better, which means it's getting harder and harder to do the work. I think Misha said it really well, that these activists are extremely brave to be documented, because the consequence can be extremely dire. Just take an example. For example, in China, a lot of activists are subjected to constant surveillance. It includes using the identity to track whether you've bought a train ticket. It can be about checking your social media. It's not only the social media inside China, but also outside of China. For example, Twitter. They will scan your Twitter and talk to you about a certain tweet that you've posted. And I think another really difficult thing for activists is that surveillance is not just imposed on the activists, but everyone around them, everyone they love, everyone they care about. And that sort of constant anxiety, that sort of constant worry, it's just like what Alka said. I think that really, really moved me. You know, knowing that her son is safe is something that's really, really important. And I think that particular situation is shared by a lot of activists around the world, especially in countries where government has that power to employ that sort of technology to trace where you are all the time, to make sure that you, your son, your children, your parents, your friends are under the radar. So and that is why I think again, I think this movie is very inspiring, because when we look at deep fakes, at least from my work, we're always very worried, about this technology. It's like, oh no, more we're already thinking of ways to sort of think about what will be a good way to counter it almost, but it's really good. I think there's an extremely beautiful example of how we can use that sort of technology to protect activists, or to actually basically to make sure that they can continue to do their really wonderful work. And again, I think I share the sentiments of other panelists today, that it's always difficult to want to do the work, but also to want to platform the work that other activists are doing, but at the same time wanting to make sure that everyone is safe. So I think this conference, I'm really glad that we're having this conversation, and this is actually giving me a lot of hope. So thank you so much.
No, thank you as well, because always we want to bring it back. And of course, we're bringing it back to Hong Kong. So delicately touching on, situations which we don't want to shy away from but need to be a bit delicate. But it is really important that our Hong Kong community know that, yes, this is about Chechnya, but we would never not want to take a moment to hold space for what's happening in Hong Kong and China. David, I've got no segue. I just need to tell you, I have been busting to ask you a question or for you to share. One of the webinars I heard a few months ago, you might notice me on Twitter almost way too excitedly live tweeting. You know, you're one of the most tweetable people. I don't know if you get told that a lot, by the way, but I love to tweet you. It's an absolute honor. But you shared a story about, we were talking about surveillance, but and you know, people monitoring themselves and being careful. You too had a bit of a sporty undercover to actually get into Chechnya. I heard you talk about being a new football fan. Are you able to share? I just think this is the lengths that you've gone to ensure protection and to like take people off the scent, so to speak.
Well, you know, the first thing that Olga told me was that we couldn't be seen as making a documentary, because obviously doing that would just break open the entire system and reveal all of the secrets. So we've developed methods for entering and leaving the Safe House network. And then as the filming progressed, we started working also on the front lines, where activists were, you know, hand to hand rescuing people and bringing them into the system of safe houses, and that involves going into Chechnya and filming as these incredible operations, almost military like operations, were being carried out, and the risk there of being exposed, or my work exposing the work of the activists, was really life and death, right? If we had gotten caught. In the scene, for example, in the film of the extraction of Anya, if my work had been revealed, Anya's life hung in the balance. There was no question about that. We all knew that. And we rehearsed these things over and over before every trip. We would come up with believable stories about what we were doing, and we would discuss them. We would have daily meetings to review them. And for the Anya extraction, it took place right after the World Cup had been in Russia, and over the objection of certainly queer activists, the Egyptian team had chosen to billet in Chechnya. And it just seemed so absurd that nobody in the World Cup was making any point about trying to even isolate Chechnya, even within Russia. But this thing was just being ignored. So I was posing for that trip as a tourist who was a wicked fan of the Egyptian team. This involved me having to learn something about football, which I know nothing about, and to memorize names and statistics for the Egyptian players. And so I filled my bags with you know, football paraphernalia. I had a cell phone that I was filling with tourist selfies, and we had kind of mapped out all the places where the Egyptians had visited when they were there, and so when we the idea was that if I were pulled aside, which seems kind of likely because I was an American in a part of the world that Americans don't travel to. In fact, very few people. There's not much of a tourist industry at all in Chechnya. It's very isolated physically as well as culturally. That I would have some story to tell. And in fact, I was detained at a checkpoint, and all of the rehearsal paid off. We unfolded the story just as we had practiced, and it was believed, thank God. And I was even asked to show my phone, which I did do, and it was full of all the proof, the evidence of what we had done. I also had a second phone, which is what I filmed that scene on, and I was able to keep that phone hidden. No one suspected that I had two, and it worked. So by the time, I have to admit, by the time we were outside of Chechnya, I had already forgotten the names of those football players and every detail of their professional careers.
That actually gives me a segue. You'd be shocked, but there is a segue. Dory, I think you know where I'm going to go with this. Again, bringing it back to Hong Kong, when we think about talking about people who are fleeing from persecution, thinking about Hong Kong and the LGBTIQA plus asylum seekers, we have a story in Hong Kong that is related to an Egyptian defender. Would you mind sharing?
Yeah, so it's a story about our friend Jay. So I think a lot of us know how difficult it is. We can only imagine how difficult it is, for a lot of LGBTIQA plus friends to flee from danger and persecution, and only to arrive in places where they face continuous discrimination and difficulties. So for Jay's case, so he is from Egypt, and he had to leave because of his sexual orientation and because of his beliefs. So when he arrived in Hong Kong a few years ago, he didn't know about Hong Kong system, because Hong Kong has a really, really strange and not good system, because Hong Kong hasn't signed the Refugee Convention, meaning that there's actually no resettlement system. There's only a government department scanning whether or not they should send you back. So oftentimes people have to wait 4, 5, or even more, like over a decade to have a decision. And in between, they cannot work. Their children cannot go to school unless they get support from NGOs and other charities. And they have really, really limited resources from the government. And they could, for a period of time, they couldn't even, like under the policy, they couldn't even get fresh food. So it was a very, very difficult situation. And it's even more so for LGBTIQA plus people in Hong Kong, asylum seekers in Hong Kong. So the situation that John and other LGBTIQA plus people faced, asylum seekers faced, is that they face very severe discrimination even inside the asylum seeker circle. And when so a few cases that we've come across were a gay person going to caseworker, trying to get more some services or advice on their application, and they were told not to share their story with anyone else because they would not be welcome. And the most heartbreaking thing is, the entire system itself is already very difficult. But in the judgment, so the application actually had to go through the court. So in one of the judgments, the judge actually said, Jay, when he walked into the room, it's difficult to believe that he's gay because he did not, I actually quoted this from the judgment, that he did not look feminine. And you would have thought, a so-called very progressive city, a financial city, with a couple of good same-sex couple rights cases, wins in the past few years, would have at least a little bit more understanding about sexual orientation and gender identity and gender expression. But that was not the case. And we also had, it's not just Jay, but also other people who faced similar discrimination in the system. But a very, very good news is that Jay finally got a sponsored visa and is now in Canada. So he's no longer in Hong Kong. He's no longer stranded in Hong Kong, which is extremely good news. But at the same time, and we're really happy because Jay wants to help. When he was in Hong Kong, he always told me, Dory, if I can leave Hong Kong, I always want to help the community. And he did. He did the interview. He'd tell people about his situation, because back then, when he was in Hong Kong, it wouldn't be possible for him to do that, because the immigration would just send him right back. But at the same time, I think Jay's story is also a very important reminder that not just in Hong Kong, I'm sure also in many places, the protection system for asylum seekers is still very ignorant about the difficulties or the persecution faced by LGBTIQA plus people around the world.
Thank you. It's really great, I think, particularly for our Hong Kong audience, but those around the world, to hear the context. And I think that's what we're really talking about, is global solidarity. We've just got under 10 minutes. So again, we'll throw to see if there are any questions. But if not, I did pre-warn the panelists that they got the opportunity to be part of the Q&A of each other. I think, Dory, you had a question that you were going to ask. Remember in rehearsal? No.
No, I actually have a question, because I don't think it's often to do such a international panel. I think that's maybe one good thing about COVID, because we want to always do things face to face. And now that we cannot, then we actually get people together on Zoom or on other platforms. So more people from around the world can join. But I do want to know how, filmmakers, activists, just activists in general, I think, how COVID changed or impact the way you collaborate or hold space for each other.
Olga, do you feel comfortable to...
It's question for me?
Is that... We're going to ask each...
I think it depends what are doing. Yeah, if you do some events, it's a little complicated. But in Russia, for example, it's not quarantine. It's not. You can move. You can went out, and it's okay. But for example, now we work with people who stay in North Caucasus, and people who need move, and it's really difficult. And for example, now I'm working with queer women from North Caucasus, and if we help someone, if we help to move from Republic, this woman should be out of Russia on the next day, because if she stay in Russia, родственники, Миш, помоги мне, пожалуйста, родственники или полиция подают на нее в розыск буквально на следующий день, и она уже не может покинуть Россию.
If there is no possibility to flee from the country the next very day, the police and relatives will apply to look for her, to find her.
And yeah, in regular work, it's okay and it's good, because we can do online events, and we can work like maybe better than before, yeah, because it can be different country on one platform. But if we're talking about evacuation, if we're talking about dangerous situation, really dangerous, it's now it's crazy time.
Yes, and I would like just to add some words to what Oля told about the activism in Russia, especially LGBT activism. I would say that I think for every country with such restrictions which governments imposed in different countries on different levels. But in Russia, we see the problems with the freedom of expression and freedom of gathering, freedom of assembly as well. There was some impact on the existence of community centers for LGBT activists in Russia, for example, because there were some times that when activists decided to close for a while these community houses, and it also impact the LGBTI population because unfortunately, I would say there's only two options for LGBTI people to see each other: other clubs, which is not for I mean for some activities in a sense of civil education. Yes, and another option is community centers. And all these community centers are still struggling with the funds, for example, because that's a huge problem for everyone nowadays. Yeah, and the problem was the problem of the single street action. Nowadays, it's very hard in Russia to go on the street and make a single street action against something. And we have almost every day, we got information about that somebody was detained almost every day, like Pussy Riots again, twice within this 1 month, I think. So there was a lot of things like that, yeah.
So, David, this is almost cruel to ask you this question with 7 minutes allegedly to go. I've asked if we could extend for 3 more hours, but that's not in unison. Russian disinformation is something, obviously, that we hear in US politics particularly, but it popping up in different moments. With regard to the film, I believe that there has been it's a testament to the success. There's been a Russian disinformation campaign recently that was launched against the film. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
No, I'd be happy to. And it's, I want to underscore what Misha and Olga were talking about in the difficulties in organizing in Russia. And you might know that the LGBT Film Festival in St. Petersburg, Side by Side, was closed down 2 weeks ago, 10 minutes before it was about to begin, on charges that they had violated COVID restrictions, which was not true, but they were all brought up on these kind of legal charges, and the venues were surrounded by police officers. It was really an awful sight, and the restrictions just on any sort of community building in Russia are getting so severe. It's outrageous, and I just appreciate anybody who's continuing to do that work. And as for Welcome to Chechnya, the state television in Grozny produced a slick 16-minute large news piece about Welcome to Chechnya, in which they attempted to take apart every aspect of it, of the veracity of the film, and it was, typical propaganda, calling the film made up, trying to deny the various cases that are described in the film. And it does show, as you point out, that the film is being taken seriously there, and they want to get ahead of it in some way, to try to undermine the power of the film, which of course is not happening. The film, when it was first released on HBO in North America, was bootlegged in Russia, and it as a pirated film on social media, it went to number 7 on the charts in Russia. So people were hungry for it, and they showed that hunger in a really important way. It is bringing news to Russia about what's happening in Russia, in a country where it's increasingly nearly impossible to get unfiltered news, especially about oppositional activism, especially around the LGBTQ community, about our lives, and what's happening to us. And you might know that we were able to find formal distribution in Russia. And 2 weeks ago, we premiered there thanks to BBC News, which is carrying us now for free inside Russia and the former Soviet states, and is finding a huge audience. I mean, we're already at 200,000 views there, and it's just growing all the time. So we've been able to do an end run around censors and bring it right into homes inside Russia, and so people there can judge for themselves what they think now about what's happening in Russia and especially in Chechnya.
Incredible. Thank you. And thank you so much for raising that. Oh, there's so many things. But what I will guarantee is that we will continue sharing, and the hashtags I am witness and welcome to Chechnya. David, can you just confirm that for me, that they're the two correct hashtags to use?
I am a witness, and welcome to Chechnya.com. You can find there the calls to action from our impact producer team. And you can also find ways to support Olga's work through the Moscow Community Center, the work of the Russian LGBT Network, and the work of Maxim Lapunov, who is the lead survivor in the film, who has brought this historic case, criminal case, against the abductors and the persecutors in Chechnya. And his case is ongoing and needs support as well. So you can find out more about all of those initiatives. Welcome to Chechnya.com.
Thank you so much, which also includes links to the Russian LGBT network. But Olga, I would love to have you be the finale. It feels very appropriate. I want to ask you, on behalf of Dirk Dalichu, who is the Eton superstar guru that has been such a great supporter and active ally, and Misha knows well, the managing director at Eton HK. He asks, how can we actively help to raise awareness for the crimes in Chechnya, and can we actually help to stop it? And to Russia in general, I think is appropriate to say.
No, we can't stop it. Unfortunately, it's crazy, and it's crazy government in Chechnya, and we just should wait when something changes in Russia.
Misha, something you said when we asked you 2 years ago, and I don't know if you remember this, and I want to just quote it because I think it's really powerful. When I asked you a question about allyship, and what can we do to be allies to you, to the Russian LGBT network, extending that to Moscow, extending that to Chechnya, and of course everyone around the world. And if I can quote what you said, it was, fight for human rights in your country. Make your place the best place to live, because that helps us all. And I think that that's still an incredible way to articulate, just never to underestimate the role that any of you can play as allies, as active allies, whether you leverage your network and you're a super connector, whether you're in a financial position, and do check out the links and we'll share them as well. Even if you're just sharing the story and holding it in your heart and thinking about the ways that we can try to shake the world gently, as we like to say. All the things, there's so much, and I just am in awe. This feels like the most extraordinary activist playdate that I've had the immense pleasure of sharing with all of you. I want to do a shout out to the absolute legends who are producing this for us, Mosaic AV. Thank you so much for not just having us here, but the way you produce this, that makes sure that the quality is really strong and we can disseminate it. I want you to know that we are going to put Cantonese subtitles on this, and so we will work really hard to release it, hopefully on December 10, which is International Human Rights Day. And the last thing, on 1 minute into extra time to use my Egyptian football fans' terminology, is our motto, as many of you know, is, it's not a live audience, this isn't going to work COVID style, I'll tell you, we want to live on a planet of allies. Now, I'm throwing David into the hot seat. This is so cheeky. I'm going to ask you to direct, David, because that's what you do so brilliantly. Can you direct our panelists, and maybe our crew will join in, to say, we want to live on a planet of allies? You can count us in.
I can try. I can try. Okay. Are you ready?
Is everybody,
Olga,
is that one okay? Okay.
Microphones, everybody. Clear your voice. And then 3, 2, 1. We want to live
on a planet of allies.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
It's okay. Look, it wouldn't be COVID style if we didn't have a cute moment for an outtake. So, and literally outtake. What an amazing out panel that we've had. I want to deeply, deeply thank the Hong Kong Lesbian and Gay Film Festival. It's just extraordinary that you made this the centerpiece at a time like this. I want to thank our panelists. Olga, it's just been such an incredible honor to get to know you and champion you, and thank you for all you're doing. And trust me, we keep you in our family. I'm sorry, that's how it works. Misha will tell you, but we really want to do all we can to support you and the movement work, and you as a parent as well. Dory, I'm going from my left to right. Thank you so much, especially for providing that context and all your international experience and all you do for Planet Ally to be aware of being the best allies that we can be. Misha, how wonderful our Hong Kong community get to reconnect with you. How wonderful you get to meet Olga, hear more from Dory, our local legend, and my goodness me, Mr. France, what an honor. This is the third most incredible, impactful film. Let us know what other work that you've got coming up in the pipelines. I'm sure that you've now recruited other directors and different people in the industry to really support the work of activism, but it's just been an absolute thrill. And again, I can't wait to tweet you. And for directing us, what an honor. So just round of applause. Thank you so much. And that's a wrap. Watch for the post-production. There'll be some extra special features.
Thank you.
Are you guys so early that you got up in the morning?